You're listening to another episode of Battles with Bits of Rubber.
I've got little jobs, bits and bobs, but I'm just waiting for this film industry to kick in because it's done September, really. There's been nothing. It's been nothing.
Yeah, it's still hit and miss over here too. People are still trying to get geared up. Being in Colorado is both good and bad, because the film business or lack thereof hasn't really affected anything here, but it's always slow. So but things are I've been getting busy doing non-film related stuff though. This Switzerland trip I'm really excited about because Switzerland's been on my bucket list since I was a kid.
Mhm.
And one of the places we're going, we're shooting at two locations, flying into Zurich, and then we're going to Lax, where they have a huge half pipe right up at the top of the mountain. So you get off the tram and it's right there at the top. So the park is right at the top of the mountain. So that's where we'll be starting out. And then from there, we're going to Schilthorn for an event sponsored by Swatch, and a bunch of other people, but Swatch is the big sponsor. And they have an event there called the Nines. I mean, you should look it up. The way they've carved all this stuff out of snow. It's insane.
Wow.
And it's also right up at the top of the mountain too. And they may actually be able to convince me to get back on skis for this one.
That sounds good.
But
That'll be a blast.
yeah, it's spectacular. The views. Oh my God. I will definitely send pictures. So we're shooting 2 days at Schilthorn for the Nines, which
say
is
that
this
correctly.
big yeah, like a shithorn. And Schilthorn for the Nines, we're shooting there for 2 days, and 1 day at Lax. So actually shooting 3 days at Lax, but only one day in the age makeup.
Wow. That sounds like a nice job though. And
Yeah, I'm stoked. And it's the same guys that I shoot this stuff with a bunch, the same crew plus one that went to Norway last year this time.
Oh wow.
So it's guys I know pretty well.
Hot dog Hans.
Yeah, hot dog Hans. This will be Hans 5
Wow.
or Hans 5.
Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, and then I get back. I'm jumping into a Bigfoot suit
Nice.
that we're building for the Denver Zoo, as well as a bunch of other stuff for their Halloween event that runs through September and October at the Denver Zoo. So we're building a bunch of things, but the big thing is a brand new Bigfoot suit.
Oh, how cool.
Which I'm really stoked about because I've been wanting to do so we're gonna be using NFT, National Fiber Technology, their hair for the suit. And we're going to be doing some cable control, kind of the way they did Chewbacca originally with it's jaw activated mechanisms for the face, but building an underskull so that the Bigfoot will be able to actually get some mouth and lip movements.
Wicked, man.
Yeah, I'm really stoked.
You would do some printing for that and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm gonna document the shit out of it.
Yeah, please.
And I'm building it with a buddy of mine from here. His name's Corey Mooseman. I don't know if you might even be following him. He's a puppeteer and an animatronics dude, and we get along great. So we're doing this together, and then we're going to be doing a big moulage training in June up in Aspen. An aircraft crash, air disaster.
Wow. It's a big scale.
Yeah, so it's a big scale. So I actually just started sculpting some stuff for that this morning.
Fucking hell, man. You sound proper busy.
Yeah, it's about freaking time.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. Oh, well done. That's really good to hear. Yeah, things here are pretty slow. We haven't got that much going on. I'm confident it's the tax year. I think everyone was holding off for the tax year. With regards to the budgets here and thing, I think everyone's waiting for the new tax year to start so that they can greenlight. But I think they just written things off for insurance, so no one was going to greenlight anything before April 5th. So hopefully in the next month it should start picking up because it's the
I
new
hope
tax.
so.
Fingers fucking crossed, eh?
Yeah.
Because it's been dire out there.
Well, I hope things will pick up, and hope I'll be able to come back over this fall. So maybe you and I can go up to Bolton this time.
Yeah, man. That was very cool. I went to Bolton for a day a couple of weeks back. And that was good fun. That was just a quick day trip, but it was yeah, like sculpting, not sculpting, application demo and ball cappy stuff and things. It was really nice to do. So
Well, listening to what we recorded down in Falmouth with Neil and Brad, that was such I'd forgotten it was so much fun.
yeah, it was really cool, wasn't it? Seems like an
Yeah.
age ago, doesn't it? I mean, we've both been pretty busy, but I've not touched the microphone since then. Well, since we did the part one, and that was a couple of months ago. I feel really bad about
Oh,
that.
yeah. Well,
Trying to keep our
I
heads up.
hope our listeners have not forsaken us because we have not forsaken them.
Wow, it's just I
We're
feel bad.
back.
I feel bad that we haven't been able to record, but it's just been just trying to keep up with, family,
Life happens.
family and illness and money and just all kinds of shit. Everyone's been going through that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's still going, and we have plans for things and interviews lined up. So we'll be doing more of those. But yeah, that was a really good fun re-listening to the part two with Neil, because that's when Neil
Mhm.
he'd had COVID, I think, the week prior to this, so hadn't been in himself. So it was his kind of return into the class. And yeah, it was a really nice chat. And it was just fun hearing things again that we
Yeah,
recorded that I'd forgotten.
Neil is so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a great time, didn't we? It was really good. It's
Mhm.
a short trip as well. We
Very
drove down.
short trip.
This episode really is the part two of Falmouth, which has been a long time coming. It's been edited. We just hadn't had a chance to chat and catch up and do our bumpers. The other thing I wanted to cover was the UMAE, which I did.
Yeah, you were doing some really neat stuff for that.
That was a fun little thing. So it was just a very simple. The plan was to do something in latex using just plaster molds. I wanted it to be really
Mhm.
cheap, because people are squeezed at the moment for everything, and they didn't want to do something that was big and elaborate, involving lots of materials. I like doing those things, but that's not necessarily that much use to somebody who can't afford to do it. So I thought, let's do some basic stuff. And what was weird,
Yeah.
listening back to that episode with Neil, where he was saying about like they start with a clay sculpture and a plaster mold and get a latex
Start
out and
start simple and get good at that.
yeah, and it makes so much sense. But it's amazing what you can do with latex. I mean, it doesn't move as well as silicon, but for a lot of things, when you're just trying to, make things that look cool, it doesn't really matter because
Yeah, no, latex is perfect for doing a nose because noses really don't move a lot.
no, and ears are very good for like
Ears are very good. Yeah.
they're light as well. They keep their shape, they're light, so they don't need to be heavy, which is
Easy to paint,
yeah,
easy to glue on.
yeah. That's one of my bugbears actually when people make silicon ear appliances, if they make them really, really soft. The trouble is, if you make a silicon ear that's really, really soft and the ear is also soft, then trying to get this on, it's like, do you know what I mean?
And then it flops around like a dead worm.
Exactly. It's really tricky. So it's much easier for ears. Ears don't move. So there's no reason to make them that
And
soft.
there's not much texture on ears.
No, probably more hair than there is texture, certainly on mine.
It's certainly on mine now.
But yeah, so it was fun to do the latex thing. And so that's all covered. So basically what I did was in the last couple of days, I've been writing up all the notes because as I was doing it, I documented everything. And then I sat down and wrote it ended up being about 5,000 words in the end. So I've turned it into
Wow.
a 24-page book. So that's going to be with these show notes on this episode. So they'll be
That's
down
awesome.
for free. So people can see what we did and
Like
how.
we're starting our own magazine.
Here you go. Which is interesting. I saw that Makeup Artist Magazine apparently is coming back online. So that could be cool if it's a good magazine. If it's dull as dishwater, but online, that doesn't make it a great magazine. Because that was one of my problems with it. It was content thin, I think.
And it went from being effects oriented to mostly beauty and fashion stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in all fairness,
Certainly the show did
yeah.
anyway.
Well, yeah, it used to be, and then ended up, the show once you started seeing the champagne and strawberry bars and the teeth whitening, it was all like, what's that got to do with? It started broadening, but I guess they would pay for a booth, but yeah, the first IMAX was amazing. It had like the Sherman Clump full size figure there and all this kind of
Yeah.
cool things. It was amazing, and then yeah, I think it's just a different time, with shows and everything in the magazines. I mean, prosthetics magazine sadly kind of died on its ass because it just couldn't make enough money. It's just the way people spend their money now. It just doesn't, like the trade shows, even the prosthetics event is good, but it's not as big as IMAX would have been 20 years ago. They were huge events that were massively well attended.
Mhm.
But things are just not the economy is not the way it was. Things are different now. So those shows are great fun to do, but they just don't have the scale, sadly. But yeah, the UME was a small show, but everyone that was there really wanted to be there, and it was
Well,
lovely.
that's up north, right?
Yeah, that was in Liverpool, so that was a long old drive. But yeah, it was really nice to do. And one thing that was fun was talking to a lot of the students, and I wanted to chat to you about this. Actually, there was a student that showed me her work, and it was really, really good. And whilst we were looking through the folio, it was one of those things as well. These shows, because they're not massive, huge, you can actually spend time with people. So I sat down about half an hour. We were chatting about all these things, and she had a really strong design sense. And I've seen this a lot, and you've probably seen it too on Instagram, where people do things that are really, they've got a very strong design sort of look. So they're visually very appealing, they're very graphic, very bold, but they're not built necessarily for a show where they've got to be reapplied, or there's no continuity, or
Hmm.
it's uncomfortable, or the horns.
Essentially a one-off kind of thing.
Yeah, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I've noticed is that a lot of Instagrammy influencer people doing those really, really cool things, but they're not repeatable, or they're not necessarily practical for a day's work, where large things like horns would be detachable, or they have to be fireproof, or you might need 3 different versions, 2 for the stunts, 1 for the stand-in and light and stand-in. You know what I mean? All these kind of
Right.
variables you need to know about for film and TV. And what I noticed was, one of the things was, a lot of the stuff that she was showing me was really, really good, but it was the images in her folio were light on the process shot. So I didn't see how the sculpt was made, or how the mold was made, or all these kinds of things. And I wanted to point out to her, and to everyone listening that might be interested, that if you were interested in the industry side of it, it's quite important to show how you did it, kind of like a maths exam. We need to see your workings out. We need to see how you arrived at these things, because you can tell a lot by someone's work, how they make their molds, or how messy the bench is, or how
One of the things that
they
Neill
work.
said in part 2 was um, about hiding things in with the photographs, where how you light something, or how you
Yeah,
shoot something. It's just
hiding in a forest.
oh yeah, I mean, hiding it in the forest. Oh, I saw what that looked like before you got there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the trouble, I think, is that the Instagram is very much about, putting a best face forward, and showing a perfect version of something, which is
Yeah, you don't see the
understandable.
mistakes.
No, but when you're hiring people, you kind of want to see what they do for real, because you're going to give them money. So, and they're going to be in your workshop, and they're going to possibly damage your reputation if you do a bad job. So people are very keen to see how you arrived at what you did. So one of the things I wanted to point out to her was that this was very nice and strong design, but also, if you're going to be interested in working in a workshop for somebody else making things, you might not be the designer. You're just going to be a pair of hands. Like, I am not a designer, really. I'm just a pair of hands. So I have to be able to interpret something that somebody else designs. And if you haven't got evidence of that, then there's no work for you. Because if you're just a designer, if you're the top of the tree, if you're just the concept person, or that's all I can see in the folio, then no one's going to hire you to make things necessarily,
Mhm.
because you're the concepty. If you want to make someone, you want to show evidence of how you make stuff well, including molds and sculpts and casts, and how you fix things, and how you fix seams, and what something looked like before.
Well, I think this is also a good example of if you are the designer and you are not going to be fabricating the makeup that you've designed, it's a good idea to understand the processes that go into the fabrication, the creating of that design, the getting to that end result. Because you've designed this beautiful thing, but it's going to be a nightmare to create.
Mm.
That maybe it wasn't that good a design to begin with. if it's almost impossible to create. Because somebody still has to wear it. I think understanding the process, even if you're not the one doing those processes,
Someone's going to
helps.
suck it up.
Yeah. So, I think as a designer, you'd rather have people going, "Oh my God, the design was amazing, and it was a blast to make," rather than, "Oh man, that design, but what a motherfucker that he is. Hadn't got a clue what goes into making this shit."
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I think that's one of the things about the the way the union works over there, where you are.
Mm-hmm.
You got the kind of the set people, and you got the workshop people, and there can
Yeah,
be
and you've got foam
hiding.
runners, you've got silicone runners, you've got seamers and painters, and it's seems to be much more compartmentalized than in the UK
Well, I think that
or
works very
anywhere
well.
else.
Yeah, well, I think that works well for a large production where you need someone to be
Sure.
top form. But then there are times where there's also quite good to have people who not necessarily good at everything, but they can do more things. But if
Yeah,
you're
sure.
not
If
allowed,
somebody calls in sick for a week, somebody's gotta be able to say, "I can do that."
sure, absolutely, yeah, that's nice to be able to fill in. And if you've got a large enough crew, then you can kind of move things around a bit. But also, I would argue if you are prevented from applying on set, there's an argument to be made that if you actually apply things, you may be a good sculptor as well because you'll know how to sculpt things for application. Whereas if you only
Mhm.
sculpt things, I mean, you might hear from someone that applied this piece that it was bad, but if you were there in the making, then you would sculpting. I mean, I'm sure it's not
Yeah.
that straightforward, that simple, but it seems like an odd thing to prevent people from doing in a way because they seem to work very well together. That's not to say that the system doesn't work well for that, and it's fine, I guess, if there's massive productions going where you're working for 9 months of the year making these things. But times like now, where maybe there's a very small production and you don't want to have to hire 8 people to do something that one person could do, it's quite good if you've sculpted and molded and cast and stuck pieces on. But again, I'm just thinking that from my point of view. I realize I don't know culturally how that works there. So
Yeah, well, I know makeup artists who have no interest whatsoever in sculpting and mold making and doing any of the workshop stuff. They only want to be on set applying makeup, which to me is not the most fun part,
no,
though it is fun.
yeah,
But I want to know how to do all of it, not just some of it.
yeah,
But that's just me,
yeah.
and that's you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and I would say, that what my experience of being on set has informed how I make things, even down to how I would package things, how I might, design a makeup so that the pieces are in multiple pieces, or we got replaceable, eye bags and lips and things, because I know that those are going to go, first, and we can change the lip without having to replace the whole bottom half of
Hmm.
the face, things like that. There's things you could do that if you know both sides of the coin. But yeah, it was
Yeah, and as a designer, if you're doing something for a face, know what parts of the face are going to move the most and where things are going to start to come loose and wear the most quickly, around the mouth and nose, because you get that warm, humid air coming out of the nose and mouth. Your mouth is smiling and frowning and eating or drinking, and I don't care how good you are
always
and
go
how great the
corners.
makeup is, like you're always going to have to be touching up around the corner of the mouth.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just the way it is.
It's a curse, so it is.
So, but you can, if you can design the makeup so that it doesn't get that close to those corners, you're less likely to have big touch-ups to
Yeah.
do if you can work around it and not compromise the design of the makeup.
I think it's a good thing as well to maybe take, good photos of those things when they go horribly awry. So that in the future, if someone insists on a piece being a certain way, you can go, well, you can, but let me show you what it looks like after 18 hours. And then let them say, you want to film on that? Because if you don't, we can change things around. Or maybe we could shoot the close-ups first. How'd that be? Whereas you don't have a photo of it, people can't
Oh,
imagine.
that'll never happen.
No. But it's
It
good to
never.
have a record of it so you can say, well, on this email, timestamp to this date, I did tell you that this would happen, and I have evidence of it. So, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Or give them a big mustache, that covers the lips and mouth, and then doesn't matter if it comes loose.
There you go.
It's just hair.
Everyone has a big mustache.
Everybody's got a mustache. Grandma, what a big mustache you have.
Anyway, I've been waffling on. We should probably just listen to the part 2 of us at Falmouth with Neill Gorton.
It's a good one.
Chance. Hi everyone. Hello. Sorry I didn't make it this week.
Were your ears burning? Were your ears burning? We were chatting about you.
Oh God.
Good stuff. Where is it? I got something to show you.
Oh, is it the book? Oh, the new one. There we go. Look at this.
Check that puppy out.
Look at that.
Your forward is amazing.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of how many years it was since.
2008.
Was it that long ago?
Yeah.
Because Todd originally contacted me back in 2008 to say that this book, he was trying to get this book done, and what was it, Focal Press needed basically, people to look and assess if they felt the book was, appropriate to be published, if it was fit for purpose, if Todd was fit for purpose. So I had the pleasure of kind of looking through the proposals and everything, and said, well, he seems to know what he's talking about. So there you go, and so the book was born, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Look at that, and yeah.
Many years later, in 15 Atlantic crossings.
Yeah.
For it.
4 editions. It's going great, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a major overhaul here.
Yeah.
Reordered chapters, nearly 20 gigs of overflow material to the companion website. I'm real proud of this one.
Fantastic.
And with your forward and Bill Corso's afterward, kind of buttoning the digital aspects all together, I couldn't be happier.
Wow.
And we're going to be talking about a lot of the digital stuff on Saturday.
Yeah, well, I've seen Stu, you've been bending the midnight oil, haven't you?
Yeah.
Trying to get.
And the trouble is, you do all this stuff for shows, and you can't show them what you've done. So I'm like, well, I'll just have to do it again.
Yeah, because people are talking about this stuff, but nobody's showing it. I mean, they're showing an end result, but they're not really getting into the process.
Yeah.
But they're engaging, because what was weird is I stuck that picture up of the cheek piece that had Inhibited.
Yeah.
And literally within 20 minutes, I had like 15 replies.
Really?
And people giving their version of how to
suggesting
avoid
how to
inhibition.
avoid inhibition.
No, but it's good. But I was like, the point of me doing was to show what happens, because I can do it uninhibited by just using the normal recipe we've always been using. But it's like no one's showed. We talk about inhibition. No one's saying this is what it means. Look at this. It's fucking horrible. And I did this and it did work, but this one worked, but this one didn't. And it's like, but they're the same resin from the same printer. And it's that kind of thing. It's like it's being very explicit about what goes wrong, and I quite like showing that.
The thing is, it's new. It's new processes. It's all the digital side of it, especially the actual making prosthetics with digital molds and modelling. The whole modelling it and printing the molds and working out what's going to work. So naturally, we're just starting with the way we always did molds, and was learning how to adapt that for the digital world. And
we were talking about how when you were first starting to encapsulate silicone, your encapsulate was silicone.
Yeah, well,
but through trying other things, before.
Well, in fact, the first ones I was encapsulating was in latex.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that too. Yeah.
So, but it was a tincture gel. So it was a different material. It wasn't the Platzer gels. So the first silicone appliances I did had a latex encapsulate.
Interesting. I did not know that.
What was the one you did that a Prozo encapsulate?
Did one of those as well. Yeah, myself and Colin Ware did one, an old age makeup, and it kind of worked. The principle's there, but it's just hard again to get out the mold and keep the edges intact and all that kind of thing.
So innovation and experimentation is the foundation of our business. If you don't experiment and screw things up and try something different and screw that up and then land on something that works really well, like cap plastic, we wouldn't be able to do the things that we do without guys like Neill.
And the thing is, it is something I think I've said here, which is there's no stupid questions, there's no silly ideas. You've just got to try things, and you've got to push things. there are things that don't work. They just don't work. I've had it before where someone's gone, I'm going to do this, try this because it's never been done. It's like, no, it's been done a lot and it really doesn't work. You're just wasting your time. But, it's what you can't, the worst thing is, when someone says, oh, the way I was taught to do this is, like, that's somehow definitive. And a lot of people come from, especially in the world of education, they'll come out of courses where they go, well, my tutor said do it this way, like somehow the rest of us are stupid. But the reality is there's lots of ways to do everything, and experimentation is important, and the way you think. And what I say to all these guys at the beginning is, I'm not going to teach you just a lot of processes by rote, just do this, A, B, and C. We're going to try and teach you how to think like someone who does effects. It's like, what material do I use? What's the best material for making X? Well, work it out. What's your outcome? What's the outcome you're after? What have you got available? What can you afford? Yeah, what can you do it somewhere safely without needing extraction? All these factors come in, and by putting together all these factors, you then whittle down to what hopefully will be the right answer, or potentially a couple of answers.
There's at least a half dozen ways to do everything we do, and if you're going to be doing a nose transformation, a nose makeup. In the rainforest on the equator, you probably don't want a gelatin nose.
No.
Yeah.
Although I have done gelatin prosthetics in the Sahara.
Oh, yeah. But it's a dry.
It worked.
I've done it in a rubber plantation in Southeast Asia as well, but sealing with prosthetic.
Yeah. So knowing how to do it all of these different ways, where you're going to be doing it, will dictate how you approach the makeup. And with the digital stuff we're talking about, it's all experimenting. We're figuring it all out. People are talking about it, or don't shoot the messenger. We're just here to tell you that ship has already sailed. This is where things are going.
Oh, yeah.
And if you don't embrace it, you're going to wind up like Jack Pierce when you don't adopt.
Well, that's it. It's like people who kind of went, oh, silly, we don't want to get into it. That doesn't work. Pretty much most of the prosthetics you see these days are still, and there's still a lot of foam latex. All we did was add it to our armory.
Yeah.
And the same with the 3D printing and the digital modelling. It's another way of doing things. And for some things, it will be the better way to do it. And for other things, it's, forget that and grab a bag of clay. It's just having these tools, and it's another tool.
Yeah.
And why would you be stupid enough to go, I don't want all those tools, I'm just going to stick with these ones? That's a stupid way to look. I mean, what we are is creative, imaginative people who are constantly looking for different ways to get to the same end result. It's exciting. This is what excites me. I love the digital things. I'm never going to give up sculpting in clay. I'm never going to give up doing all that process. But it's a new tool, and it's an exciting tool. It's a fun
because
thing.
it's a new thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we get to start out. It's like when we started using silicone. Then it was like, here's a new material. This is exciting. Let's learn how to do this. Let's invent ways to work with this. And the same with the printing.
That's the thing. It's not to be ruled by it. You're actually going to master it enough that you can actually use it, not it use you. You're kind of like, what can I
and find ways to work with it that you haven't seen other people do yet.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody has tried it, but they haven't made their discovery public.
Yeah, but it's the graft as well, and it's like you've always been not afraid to do things like, let's make this. It might not work, but we've got to go through the process of making it. And if it doesn't work, well, why didn't it work? Let's specify, and then you've got to put the graft in. It's just hours. It's like we're talking about printing can be easy. Like Horatio was talking about his printers, and I had problems with the thing. He sent me a slicer profile. I was looking through it. And he was going like forensic. I'm like, what's the penetration on the tip of your supports? I'm like, oh fuck.
Sounds a bit rude.
And he was like, what kind of resin are you using? He go into this shitty 0.4 mil. I'm like, really? I'm like, and you realise there's just all these variables, and he knows because he's done like 100 of these to test it. He's put the work in.
Yeah.
What's the temperature? Have you got a thermometer in there?
Yeah.
No. We'll get a thermometer. We want to keep it about 25 degrees. I'm like, really? And all this kind of stuff. I'm like, that's why his prints come out well. Yeah. It's not magic. it does do stuff for you, but you have to put the work in and go, oh, and so your head goes, oh, okay, I've got to master this to some degree so that when a job comes up, I'm not going, how does this work? You've got to do the grind. You've got to put the hours in.
None of us have gotten good at doing stuff right out of the gate.
Do the
first
toil.
time.
Yeah,
because put in the time.
Because sometimes you get a piece that's like, run this, it's the wrong colour. But it's like, yeah, we're on set in 2 hours. Figure it out. And you'll be glad that you spent that time mixing the skin tones because your brain is like, oh, it's not red enough. It's as simple as that.
But it's like anything in our business. You know, the one thing people want to... I sometimes would get people say, oh, I want to do a course for like a week where I'll learn everything. It's like, what do you think we do? You know, this is a specialist field. This is something people spend, you know, massive amount of time learning and still don't know a fraction of it. You know, we spend whole careers doing this. So don't, you know, it's not something you can just get given the knowledge, you know, and it is about learning and lots of, you know, in terms of processes, lots of iteration. Mm-hmm. You know, I've got lots of printers and have done thousands of prints now. And every time you do one, you learn a little bit more and a little bit more. Every sculpture I do, I try a little something different, try something new. I'm still learning how to sculpt. Yeah. I'm still learning how to stick on makeup. I'm still learning every time I do something. I often try and introduce something else just to find out what happens.
Yeah.
But you just don't get things quick and easy. It is just doing it. And through doing 100 prints, you might learn one more thing that you go, oh, that made that better.
Yeah. But you're driven by that desire to know it. That's the thing. If you're just going, I just want a good result. I'm annoyed that it's not worked. Obviously, it's annoying when it doesn't work, but like your expectation is incorrect because the people that tend to do it are the ones that are nourished by the process rather than just the end result. Everyone can like a nice result, of course. But that's not what people pay you for. It's like a doctor. Like if you're really sick and no one knows what's going on, you really want people to keep. Oh fuck it, I've tried. You want people to keep working on it because you depend on it. And it's like, okay, this isn't like saving lives, but like it's really good if someone hires you and go, oh, thank God it's you, I can relax, I know it's going to be fine. And it's a nice feeling when people want to work with you because you're there to solve problems, not to cut corners. You're looking at the clock, wondering how can I get this done quicker.
It's interesting because I did something similar when I started getting into this. I bought a flat 3D wound that I wanted to try and turn into a flat mould. And I just couldn't get my head around it. And then that led me into learning about how to make a flat mould in person with clay. And actually, it might have been easier to have done it that way. Yeah. And then that then leads into ZBrush, where you can do a flat mould in ZBrush. So it's that multi-path of learning by trying. And
well, it's kind of human nature also. People tend to really underestimate how difficult things are. Yeah. You know, in a field. I mean, everyone, you know, everyone's talked about some professional in some way and kind of dissed them and gone, oh God, you know, they're making that overcomplicated, or they're making, you know, what do they know? They're just bigging this up. But the reality is, pretty much anything that you've got to be very good at takes a lot of work and a lot of effort and is more complex than you realise. And the minute you buy this little, okay, hang on a minute, and you just see all these sort of avenues open up that you didn't know existed because you thought it would be simple, and now it becomes something very complex with 100 different ways to tackle that one problem, you know. But yeah, I mean that's what we do. We just you learn about things. It is just very boring, meticulous, putting your head down, getting on with it. But that's why we do. I mean, on this course, you know, the first thing we do is we do something in wet clay with a plaster mould. You know, that's where we start, because too many people also start to think that complexity is somehow always like, look, you know, I see a lot of people who start out who go, right, I'm going to buy the most expensive materials. What's the best quality clay? What's the most expensive material? And what's the most advanced this? And what's the most, that if you get the most complex thing, somehow that'll be better. And it's like,
find that you just spent a lot of money for nothing.
For nothing. Yeah. So basically, it's like, no, pull it right back to the basics. And the basics are clay and plaster. Mm-hmm. And then we do latex and silicone out. And that's it. And that is the fundamentals. And that just allows you to think about the process in its most simple linear form, learn about a couple of the most basic materials in a very simple way, and not overcomplicate it. Because again, people do have a tendency to really overcomplicate things at the beginning. When they're starting out, they just, oh my God, I've got to learn this, and this, and this. And it's like, you don't, let's just focus on the fundamentals. You know, a sculpture, a mould, a cast.
Yeah, Stu and I have been talking about offering a course where all you're going to do is create a nose. Nothing more than a nose, and make it look as though that person is not wearing a prosthetic.
Yeah.
I think it's
It could
easy
be
to...
as simple as that, and
Yeah.
if you can do that well, man, then the next you've got some enthusiasm now to go a little bit bigger and knock that one out of the park, and just keep going from there. But if you can do a nose,
That's what we did for the
Nose
prosthetic
job.
magazine, that
Yeah.
latex nose. It was
Yeah.
like a bulk
Yeah.
stand
Yeah.
thing, and it doesn't have to be, and try and make it look like a real
That's a great idea. I like
Just
that.
make it look, as real as you can, because you're going to meet most of the problems you're going to have with prosthetics with a nose.
And slip
Yeah.
cast latex as well. I
Yeah.
really love
Yeah,
that.
it works great.
And it doesn't cost a lot, you want to do it again, it's only going to cost you a couple of quid, it's not going to...
But I think it's easy, particularly from a student perspective, sometimes it's easy to confuse creativity with complexity. They're really different things. You know, you can be very simplistic, but also incredibly creative as well. So,
I know, well, the other one is scale.
yeah,
The amount of
Yes,
times
yes.
kind of doing courses where I'm talking people down off that ledge of, I want to build this enormous, and it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just honestly, that you can get everything you need in something quite small. You can show the sculpting, the painting, the mold making, everything on a small piece. I often show Aris Colocontis, his work. And you see pictures of his work, and they look fabulous. And then you realise they're only, something 6 inches tall, and it's like, oh my God! And it's the fact that you, as you say, you can tick all the boxes. It doesn't have.
You're
to
looking
be
in the wrong place.
all the skills you're going to learn. You can learn on something that big, just as much, and probably better than something, enormous. And actually, as soon as you start trying to build big things, you just get a bit swamped by the scale.
You do.
And a bit intimidated and a bit kind of lost with it.
And products can kind of corrupt it by making you believe that you can kind of bypass stuff. But the best books you've ever read, it's the same 26 letters. Do you know what I mean? It's what you get out of it, not. It's not pulling in better things. You can do a great a crap makeup with a great airbrush.
Absolutely.
If you don't know how to do it.
simplicity. That's. I think even for me, on my sort of general creative and professional journey, I've sort of finally clocked that simplicity is really important. Like it's a cornerstone of design, good design, and used to carve away all of the extraneous stuff and just focus on what's simple and try and do it well.
I think you have to go through a kind of an adolescence with it, though.
You do.
Where you have to kind of go a bit over the top and crazy and your mad blood phase and 50,000 teeth, and then you come out the other side of that where you go, okay, it's just a really nice alien makeup, or we just make them look creepy or whatever. Do you know what I mean? It's just something that's not. I think a good thing to do is 5 makeups on one person. Just make them look like 5 different people.
It's a really good one, actually.
Just not a lot. Whatever it is, break their shoulders slightly. Pick someone that's neutral enough that you're not fighting with something obvious. That'd be a good thing to do that doesn't involve just little earlobes. Maybe one is pushed forward, maybe their hairline's higher on one. Maybe they've got something packing their lower teeth out. Just simple things that are not big stuff, but again, it's being creative with limited things.
That was one of the things I always enjoyed. I had the great fortune in my career of doing a lot of those kind of comedy
All
shows.
those Paul Whitehouse makeups.
Where you would work with one actor and turn them into multiple different characters.
Yeah.
And actually, the amount of things you end up, just all the tricks and how you can take one face and keep adapting and changing, and teeth and lenses and different wigs, and it's a fantastic way to learn. It's a brilliant way to learn. And just because then also you start understanding the face so much more, and understanding what you work with and what makes them younger, what makes them older, what makes them...
And how they perform as well, because they can make something work.
Well, that was always the way with the comedy actors, where they would be so invested in it. I mean, the amount of times I've had more regular actors who, you get 2 kind of actors. You get actors who love being characters. They love to be in disguise. They love to be hidden. and then you get other actors who just want to be themselves.
Yeah.
So the minute you start putting something on them, they go, yeah, but maybe just a bit more natural would be all right. And you pile all this stuff on, and then slowly but surely they want it all off, and in the end you're just going, yeah, but that's just you. We've seen that before. I mean, not to diss Tom Cruise, but he looks like Tom Cruise in every Tom Cruise movie. He never looks really different.
Yeah.
You know,
With only one exception.
with one exception of in Tropic Thunder, but that was his one little, oh look at me, I can do a character. But every other movie, it's pretty much the same hairstyle, pretty much he's just the same character. Whereas a Gary Oldman, you have no idea what Gary Oldman's like, because he is just really different every time. So those are the two people that you're dealing with, and trying to force an actor who just wants to be themselves into a wig and into you're never going to get there. You just go, yeah, fine, Will.
I've got an actor buddy of mine who loves being in prosthetic makeup, and as soon as I start gluing pieces on him, he's already moving his face around and trying to find that character. And it's tough because he won't hold still, but it's great watching him transform.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's nice as well that you work with actors and other, like hair and makeup, that are really good at what they do. It kind of pushes you along as well, I think, because you hear, if you're doing makeup for hours on someone, you get chatting and you realise they'll talk about how they got into the character and the shoes that they wear and the walk that they've been developing, because that puts them in the right headspace and that kind of stuff. And you realise this is expansive body of work that they put into something that isn't necessarily obvious, but it kind of works, and you kind of feel like, I should be doing that with what I do. And it might not be something that everybody knows, which is why I like talking about this stuff, because it's slow and it's boring, but it's the work that I think is important. Where it's just something like, well, on Instagram, it's like, oh, and on to the next thing, and it's almost designed to be instantly forgettable. But something that takes a lot of work to get right it's important, I think, and it stands out.
Well, that's why you show how you get from A to Z.
Yeah, and not everyone's going to sit and listen, and that's fine, because I drone on, but that's how I think in my head. I'm with something for a long time.
But it's sort of the joy of doing as well. Like, I think sometimes that gets a little bit lost, particularly for students that have the pressure of wanting professional careers. It becomes very result driven, and I think they, when you're creating something, you're making something, it should be a fun thing. It should be enjoyable. Yeah. There should be a zen quality to it that makes it worthwhile just in and of itself. A little bit like you were saying earlier, the joy of doing rather than there having to be this, perfect end result.
Yeah. Which is also what's nice about this environment, because we mark work at the end of a study block, and you're looking at the entire process. Yes. You don't just look at the outcome. We often get this question, and it's like, look, you can have a lovely picture. You can make something look great in a picture if you're a bit clever, And I've seen it a lot of times where there's a piece of work that you go, well, that looks all right actually, but you're getting away with that. It's you've gone out in the park out there and hid half of it behind a tree, and the lighting was just good. But I know, I saw that, and it wasn't that great. So whether you can take a good picture or not isn't what we're looking at. We're looking at the whole thing holistically, the thought that went into it, the design that went into it, the process, the sculpture, the mould, the cast, the painting, the finishing, the hair punching, all those elements. We're taking that as a whole. We're not just looking at the outcome, because and sometimes people do a fantastic process and it just goes a bit tits up at the end. Because how many people have applied a big prosthetic before? And if you've done all this work and you've really not done that before and it didn't go great, well, I'm not going to judge you on your that whole study block on just how well you applied to makeup that one day. If the pieces were great, the molds were great and everything, then it's still going to be a good mark, So that's what's nice. That's nice coming into these environments. We're not just looking at a finished thing and passing off a judgment, And there's a lot of things, I remember, it's a weird thing where you look back at stuff you saw in a magazine when you were younger and getting into this that you thought, wow, that looks cool. And then when you saw it, you go, actually, it's a bit shit, isn't it? And you were like, okay, that was just shot well.
Yeah.
And that was lit well, and that was presented well. But the reality is, it's nowhere near what I thought it was.
Yeah. And that is evidence of you improving, and you probably all felt like when you've done something, you look back at it like a year later and you go, oh God. But that's evidence of you improving because you've gotten better. Because at the time you remember thinking, oh, that's pretty good. And now you don't. And it's like, that's because you got better. That's evidence of you getting improving.
I talk to my students a lot about that, about being constructively critical. Critical isn't a negative thing. That critical conversation is really key.
Yeah.
It's learning to embrace that and be, that's part of your process. Being self-critical but not destructively self-critical.
Yes.
Exercising with each other and peer to peer. But again, in a positive way. There's all sorts of ways to do that.
Yeah.
But that's a conversation that you really miss when you're out of an education space, because you lose, if you nurse in a shop or you're busy on a project or with another team or studio group, the isolation is a problem. This is gold. When you've got everybody around you to bounce off and
you have a great support system.
Yeah, it's really, really key. And you know what you're saying about is absolutely right. You've got to love it. You've got to want to be in the room. If you don't, nothing follows. Yeah. And when you're learning anything in my field or whether it's this field, you know, you can be put off by, oh God, it's so much has to do, so much work. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of work. But if you love the work, you put the hours in, and step by step, you very quickly make progress. Yeah. But the other thing to really take away, I'd say, is it's not magic. You know, you're not born with these skills. You know, you put the hours in, you develop them, you get better, and actually it's achievable. So look at it in that way as opposed to the kind of lot of work. Look at it,
in a group,
it's not magic.
In a group this size, you know, you can help each other and support each other, but don't judge your work based on anybody else's work in the class because it's not yours. It's there, but use the support system that you've got. You know, be encouraging, and you know, if you see something that you know they could do better, don't be afraid to make a comment. You know, they can either accept your advice or not. One thing I learned from you back in, I think it's 2004 when I brought some students out to IMATS in LA. I was watching you look at somebody's portfolio, and I was really impressed with the way you critiqued it, because you were critical of their work, but you also took the time and effort to show them what you really liked about the work, what you thought they could improve on it, and how they could improve on it, so that they left having been criticized quite harshly, but feeling good about themselves. And I have never forgotten that, and I now try to do that every time I look at somebody's work, to find the right words to keep the enthusiasm high, to keep the excitement there, because you don't want to. I worked with an illustrator who was teaching at the same school, and I watched him look at a portfolio. We talked about this at lunch earlier, that he flipped through the page and and closed the portfolio and said, "I'm going to go home and kill myself."
This is terrible. That's cruel.
But with the student he said it to, it worked, because he wound up getting a job with Pixar, I think, and because it was basically, "Fuck you! I'm going to show you."
Yeah.
And it worked for him.
That's a roll of the dice, isn't it?
It might not have worked for anybody else.
He could have been in the garage with a hose pipe. Totally different story, wouldn't it?
It's got to be careful, but you know, deal with it. You know, it's okay to not think your work is good enough.
But that happens because
that's our nature.
Because
our work is never going to be good enough.
But it's good to kind of explain. I mean, like, because when you work for people, when they pay you, they want what they paid for, and they're not going to hold back because they're a customer, and if you didn't give what you want, so you have to build a certain amount of robustness. But that's what you've got to build into it. You've got to elicit from what is it they really want. Try and read between the lines, and make sure you dig deep. I mean, I had that with quotes where, like, there's a job come in, and it's like there's not enough information in the quote, so you have to think around it and go, well, maybe like there's a dead. Say we need a fake head, and they didn't say whether the eyes are open and closed. Does it need teeth, a tongue? Is it articulated? Is it cut off, or is it just?
How much does it
How
cost?
low does it come? So maybe you haven't got the whole thing. So what you would do, what I've done is I've explained these. So, you know, you didn't mention when you know when we have eyes it's this much, without eyes it's that much, because you didn't say da da da. And oftentimes they're back, or you can't do it. And you explain these things, you know, just I can't do it, but just so you know, I noticed in your quote there's a couple of things you didn't mention. It would help you to mention the articulation of what it's for. Is it going to be picked up by the hair? If so, that's going to pull the hair. Things that you may not know as someone who's been tasked with getting a prize for this, you may not know. And they're often very grateful that you thought around it. So it's kind of trying to test people a bit so that you aren't left out in the cold because you're asking them. Because if they haven't supplied information, it's kind of your job to say no, or I can, but I need to know this, this, and this. And those are my terms. And if you can't supply that information, then you
But
know
of course,
what
you
to do.
develop confidence to know those things, to respond confidently. I spend a lot of time saying yes to everything, and then over time, 20 years, you think, I'm going to start saying no to some things.
Yeah.
I'm going to do those things.
Yeah.
And equally, if somebody says, we've got, you know, can you do this for this job, money? You do a less good job because it's cheap. Well, no, that's not the way it works.
No, you don't want to be. You don't want to be cheap. You don't want to race to be the cheapest, because the trouble is, if you try to be the cheapest, you might win. And then no one enjoys it. And the amount of times I've had things crop up where I'm like, I can't do this, and then I hear 2 years later, the people that paid for it hated it. The people that did it are now having a nervous breakdown, and the movie's crap, and the thing is all. Do you know what I mean? You're like, well, nobody won.
But of course,
nobody won in that situation.
You can be critical and still be kind. You know, critical and cruel are very different things.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, if I'm turning a job down now, I often say, but you might call this person, and they, you know, and then that's their call whether they take that job. But actually, you're sharing that work, which is nice as well.
I have a policy of good, fast, cheap. Pick two.
That's right. Yeah.
But there are certain things you kind of like the cost of materials. You know,
Well,
that's
I
what
quit
costs.
Facebook years ago, but I know on 911, Stuart's been telling me about posts he's seen of somebody saying, "I've taken this job. I'm doing a werewolf in 3 days. How do you do?"
Yeah, the answer to your question is, why did you take the job if you don't know how to do it? Sometimes that is the answer.
I sometimes show this in classes, and it's a meme. It's one of those things that gets passed around, and it's a quote, get a great offer, you know, just say yes, even if you don't know how to do it, learn how to do it afterwards. And it's like, that's the most stupid fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. It's like, oh, okay, someone offered that I could be a pilot. Yeah, I'll just learn afterwards, shall I? You know, I mean, that's not going to happen. You don't do that. Be responsible. I mean, we all know. I take things on, the jobs, things I've never done before. But I have a bunch of skills, and I know that, you know, nearly every job I do is a different job. It's a different brief. But I pretty much know how to do it. And actually, if it's something completely outside my sphere, I'm going to go, it's probably not my thing, you know.
Yeah.
But this idea that people have come up with these sort of quotes, which is just say yes and worry about it afterwards.
But that's
like the most damaging thing.
It's like that ferry company that said they
terrifying
haven't got any ferries. Remember that?
Yes.
They took the job and hadn't got a boat.
Didn't have any boats. Got the contract.
I'm Bob's mate in the government. I can make PPE. It doesn't work. The world doesn't work like that.
No.
I know.
But it is so common, and we see that online all the time. People going, oh, well, I've taken this job on, and now I'm trying to figure out how to do it. It's like, and it's not that, you know, sometimes people go, look, I was thinking of doing this, but anyone else got a thought. That's fine, because you're exploring the idea, but if all else fails, you can do it this way.
Yeah.
But the people who just clearly have no clue what they're doing at all, and are just expecting this online world to sweep in and present them the solutions is just it's terrifying.
You've seen the video of the two French guys that were trying to do a life cast off this woman's head.
Isn't the one that boxed
Her head in the table with her hole and straws in her nose and a box, and they pour the alginate into this box, and you just see the straw shoot out of her nose, and she just starts flailing about because they're drowning her in alginate.
And again, I'm sure the annoying thing is that this has been videoed.
Yeah.
So clearly, it was a time that if there's video technology, there's books showing how to do this. And clearly, they didn't either look up, research, or find out. They just thought, I know, we're just going to invent our own way of doing this, which is wildly ridiculous, massively expensive on materials, massively stupid overall in the way they put her in there, massively risky.
Yeah,
And
they
you just
nearly
think,
killed
how
us.
did you avoid finding out how to do this? You'd have had to avoid
And then
finding out how
upload
to
the
do it.
video. You were doing that shit, right?
You were thinking, I'm not going to let anybody see this.
Why would you keep
I mean, just on that, I mean, I did something similar in my early years of lecturing, and I think we probably have all made mistakes, but the key thing is you learn from them and don't video them.
But it's not difficult to find out, at least get a modicum of an idea, and actually you can go, is this easy? Is this difficult? Is this, to ask those questions. So anyone who just charges ahead, decides that they're going to just fly the plane without ever having a lesson, well, it's Darwinism, isn't it? At its finest, people eradicating themselves from the gene pool.
The first mask making class I taught, where we had done life casts and we were going to do latex pours into ultracal molds. We must have done 12 life casts in one day, and I'm mixing helping them with mixing ultracal. We got several stations on, but I'm not wearing gloves while I'm mixing the ultracal. And on about the 6th mold, I'm mixing the ultracal. I'm noticing the ultracal is kind of turning pink.
Oh my God. Your hands are burning. Right?
Well, it was just the ultracal was just sucking all of the. My hands had gotten so dry from mixing all the ultracal that my skin on my knuckles was cracking and bleeding into the ultracal. I said, I think I'm going to start wearing gloves to do this.
Yes.
Live and learn.
Good skin tone on the rubber, was it?
Oh, it was great. It was actually a very successful class. We had
Fucking biohazard.
some great.
Gave everybody HIV.
It was the same class, not that term, but the same class in another term. There was a guy who was not registered in my class, but really had wanted to be in the class, and cut one of his classes and came in to kind of help out.
Yeah.
So he thought he would help out with putting bald caps on some of the students, and he's going through my kit, and he pulled out a tube of super glue and glued this bald cap down on some, and I'm working somewhere else, and he's putting this bald cap on with super glue. Thankfully, I had some super glue debonder in my kit also, because I had several kits going, and it's like, please leave.
I think what was it in our first year here? We had a student who was so keen to get going and making a plaster mould. She had a little thing. She was like, "I've got it," and it was like, the plaster's not here yet. And she came in and she looked in the cupboard, and there's a big bag of white powder, and she thought, great. She mixed it up, poured it on the thing. It was talcum. She was like, why is my plaster not setting? It's talcum. It's like, you could have read it. It says on the bag, talcum. She just went, oh, big bag of white powder. Yeah.
Well, at least she didn't snort it.
Oh, any questions from the audience? Oh, look, boom.
I asked this earlier, what's to the rest of the group, it was, what is your favorite prosthetic makeup that you've seen on screen that has pulled you more into the story than taking you out of it? Because we were discussing how some makeups will just pull you right out of the film, and whereas some will just bring you right in.
I'm always that kind of thing. I very rarely have a favourite this or a favourite that, or kind of work that way. My head doesn't work that way. I mean, of recent things, I thought the Darkest Hour, the Churchill makeup was brilliant because, and during that process, they started out with something that looked like Churchill, and then casually they removed things and minimized and gave the actors a bit of space to breathe. So they didn't try and make it exactly like Churchill. They just made it Churchill-esque and allowed the performance through. And as a film, you just watch that and go, yeah, I'm not questioning anything there. I completely believe it. I enjoyed the film and didn't really think about the makeup. So that's probably the only one that's kind of popping as being, okay, that's what I can think of in that context.
The other one is, because one of your first jobs was with Christopher Tucker, right?
Mm.
The original Elephant Man makeup,
Yes,
you've done many Elephant Man makeups,
Yeah.
but that original one, I remember being really, really young and watching that movie, and it affected me really emotionally. And I think I must have been so invested in believing in that John Hurt as that character, that it sort of completely broke that wall and made you feel so much sympathy and respect for him as a man. And so the makeup would have had to be very, very successful for that to happen.
Yeah.
It so easily could have gone the other way.
Yeah.
It could have been laughable.
Yeah.
Very
Similar to like the whale.
very, very risky makeup.
That's very similar to like with the whale. That was
Yeah.
with Brendan Fraser. Like that
Yeah.
could have gone really sideways if that wasn't done well.
And that is the hard thing. It's very easy to do it badly. And there's a lot of examples of those, where either the makeup artist or somebody's just indulged themselves too much, and now we're losing. It's about that collaboration with an actor and finding a nice middle ground where they can perform, they can do their thing, but the makeup tells the story and isn't trying to be the star, which does happen sometimes. What was that?
I just wondered if the book was still going around because it's missed some people.
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely. Oh, he said, have you only got one copy? I thought that's
I didn't bring your copy down.
Yeah, it's so cheap. There's triangle there, cheap, that's good.
You'll get yours on Saturday.
So I want to ask, for someone who wants to work in the future in the film industry and
Don't.
to me, I'm terrified what to do after this, after my academic year is over, and what I want to ask is, what was it like for you in the early stages of moving in?
The thing is, we're all older farts, so it was a very different time. When I started, there was no internet even, and all that kind of thing. You got in by luck, really. I started, the first job I did, I was 17. I started very early as a runner. I used to write letters to various people, Christopher Tucker and all those, and I managed to get a little bit of work experience with Chris Tucker.
Oh, he was a great guy.
When I was 17, and then I'd gone to London. I'm from Liverpool, so I'd gone to London, and I had a portfolio in my bag, and my brother was living in London at the time, so I was going to stay with him, and I left my bag and my portfolio at Euston Station in the left luggage.
Oh.
No, I did it on both. Where you leave. Because he wasn't home until that evening, so I went off around London, straight to Forbidden Planet bookshop. As you do, got nothing else to do. I've got to wait for him to get home. Put them in a luggage locker thing. Went into Forbidden Planet, and while I was there, I spotted Bob Keane. Who used to. Now, Bob had a company called Image Animation. He did like the original Hellraiser film, Highlander, all these kind of things. And I'd seen just recently, I'd seen a magazine article about Bob doing Hellraiser. And then I was in Forbidden Planet bookshop and I went, that guy. And of course, what I did was go and find the magazine and did a bit of that. Yeah, that's him. So I just stalked him. I waited outside, and he came out, and I just kind of grabbed him and went, "Excuse me, you're Bob Keane?" He's like, "Yep." I was like, I've just worked with Chris Tucker, so I learned very quickly the name drop. Really? Works very well. I said, I'm looking for some work. And he said, we're just starting the film. Come down and see us at Cheltenham Studio. Perfect. So I got my portfolio. I went down to see him 2 days later. Went down to see him, and that's how I got a job. But, I just took that opportunity. But I wrote a lot of letters before that. I was in touch with a lot of people. I got some work with Chris Tucker from writing him letters, showing him the work. So what you do after is you just get the best portfolio you can together, and you start writing letters, you start contacting people, people use this term networking, but it does kind of work, because there's two ways you get work. One is, you introduce yourself to someone, people see your portfolio, your CV and all of that kind of thing, and that gets the ball rolling, you get a job somewhere and off you go. The other way is you work up through the industry. There's a lot of student films. For example, here, when I started out, I used to do a lot of student films still. Even though I was working in the industry, there was sort of gaps. It was a very quiet industry back in the late 80s. So there was a lot of gaps. So I just work on student films. With the National Film and Television School, and basically anybody who was doing anything who needed something. And there's still producers and people I know today who were student producers back then, and people who I got work from 30 years ago that I knew when they were students.
Yeah.
So actually that experience is nothing to be sneered at. There's lots of people that you meet on your journey who pop up further down the line and become, much more important in the industry. I think I showed you the John Wick 4 makeup that I did. Now that was one of those instances that the executive producer on that, because I ended up turning it down, and she rang me up and went, "Come on, we're old mates, do this." Is Louise Rosner, she was the producer's assistant on Nightbreed and Hellraiser, and she was we were both like 18-year-old kids working on those films. So I knew her from when she was the producer's assistant. She ended up on a top executive in Hollywood, who then browbeat me with that fact that she was a top executive to get me to do a job I was richly saying no to. But those people come around. So going up through the low budget, the no budget, and all of that is a very valid way of going, because you meet people and you don't know when someone's going to take a step up. And if they like you and work well with you, they often take you with them. They'll often then recommend you, and that's how everyone works. And we've all of that. I mean, Stuart, we worked together for the first time on a very low budget film, wasn't it? Breeders. Which was no budget, low budget. That was me at the time of first building my company.
Yeah, in a cowshed.
In a cowshed in Ottershaw. It was a really nice cowshed. And you're doing these low budget horror films, But
learning the craft.
But Ed Thomas, who was a production designer on that film, went on to be production designer on Doctor Who.
Oh my god.
So I remember walking into the first meeting, it was like, hello. And he's now a very top production designer. He just did that The Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Right. Oh, wow.
So, those people, you meet them, everyone's got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So, there's a whole film school here full of people, and some of them are going to end up somewhere. So this is why it's also good to make those connections and, build that up, because you never know where it leads you.
Yeah, definitely get in with the film school peeps here before you graduate. Another great way is pretty much everybody in the business is on one social media platform or another. And I've found, if you just say Steve Wannick, for example, you say, "God, Steve, I love your work. Are you hiring?" He's not going to respond at all. Yeah. But if you say, "Steve, I love your work. I'm getting ready to graduate from the master's program at Falmouth University. I know you're busy, but I'd love for you to take a look at my work and see if you can tell me what I can do to improve my work." He's likely to respond because he's that kind of guy and offer some advice. And if you
cue Steve Wang just getting inundated, what's going on there? My inbox is just full of all these people saying that the exact same.
But you take his advice and show him the improvements he suggested. He said, "Great." He sees that you can take direction, you follow through, because he's done tests before where he's gotten these kind of requests from people, and he's said, "All right, here's a project for you," and 9 out of 10 of the people won't even do it. He may not have anything in his shop, and he's not doing makeup anymore. He's doing these big installation pieces that are just magnificent. But if something comes up, you're likely to be one of the first people he would call, or he can say, Mike Elizalde over at Spectral Motion is starting up a new project. I think you might be right for this. Mike's expecting to hear from you. That's how this stuff can also go.
I mean, there's people often ask me, what's the key thing you hire? What are you always looking for? And it's just talent. I mean, that's the number one thing is talent. Yeah. And if you can show that talent, and it doesn't have to be wild and extraordinary, it's talent, and that can be even in making molds or in, you know, one of my favourite Instagram pages is Rob Freitas.
Yeah.
Which all his pictures make a mould, you know. I mean, obviously I have a very sad life, but I get excited by looking at moulds. But, you know, that's the kind of thing. But you can really, you know, that guy is a phenomenal talent in his field because it's there on display. So, I mean, I say to a lot of students, you know, have an Instagram account, show that stuff. Because I've hired people off of Instagram. I've seen their stuff. I looked and went, wow, this is good. And I've dropped them a line. It's like, who are you? What do you do? You know, you can't deny talent. You might turn out to be idiots, in which case you don't hire them again. But you're looking for talent. Everyone's looking for those talents. Which also means if you have an Instagram page, make sure it's not, here's a nice sculpture. Now here's a picture of me on holiday eating 2 hot chilies and crying, and here's a picture of me drunk. It's like, no. Have a, you know, we had to talk to one of our students. We had to talk to one of our students last year, didn't it? Over, we said, look, your Instagram account, you know, it's good. There's nice pictures, but you might need to change the name because at the moment it's at the shityard.
And she's a super talented student, by the way.
I just hired her.
Oh, there you go.
But I did say.
And she got rid of the shipyard.
I did say it's probably not. You know, when you're talking to people and they go, "Okay, what's your Instagram account?" At the shipyard. That's not going to inspire a lot of people to go and look. Exactly.
But I think any of us would agree that we would prefer to hire somebody who is just out of school but shows promise talent-wise, is trainable, is gets along well with everybody.
Yeah.
Over somebody who has mad skills and an attitude.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's quite unquantifiable, but it's such a truth, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Nobody wants to work with Nick. You know,
absolutely.
I mean, be friendly, be a team player, and have your skills. It's kind of it's quite hard to pin down when you're teaching. And I also talk to students like in my field and can find out illustrations. So if nobody knows you're there, you're not going to get the work. You've got to get work in front of them. You've got to take opportunities. You've got to get work online. You've got to follow the lead. If you know somebody offers a conversation, you've got to. That's work in itself. That making that happen. And if you're making the best work in the world in your shed and you're not sharing with anybody, who knows you're there? You know, you can make a lot of opportunity happen.
And you can express your ability to do those things in the smallest of ways. Like if you're like just running around and there's nothing going on, I'll sweep up or empty the bins or make some tea. And then you pull out, a notepad. What do you want? You write down whatever you want. Then you make a list. You put it next to the kettle so everybody knows what has. And just little things like that. There's little evidence to be like, oh, they're really paying attention to what's going on. There's nothing worse than a runner that doesn't know where the kettle and the broom is. It's like,
and don't be passive online. Nobody owes you anything. Contribute. Be positive. Feedback to people. People love feedback. Everybody loves feedback.
Yeah.
And actually, whatever you think, this kind of mad person up there is really big in the industry. It's astonishing how many people you do end up in dialogue with. And that's a real gift of the kind of modern age that was much more tricky 20, 30 years ago in all fields. Yeah. Because you have often got quite a direct line to that conversation. They can decide whether to pick up on a message or a comment, but comment positively and to love the people you want to talk to, because that begins that conversation.
Yeah, it's great is not the kind of feedback somebody wants to hear because it doesn't. What's great about it? Yeah. Explain. You want to give. Man, I love the way those eye bags look. What eye bags? But that's the kind of comments you want to make is say something good. If you don't, this. Yeah, the criticism is probably less positive than being totally positive. That makes sense, right?
I think so.
Critical, what?
I was going to say, it's funny you should mention the sweeping up and making tea, because I remember when I was in LA going to Monsterpalooza, I looked for a studio and I decided to email them and say, I can't do anything, but I can make a cup of tea and I'm willing to clean your bins and sweep up. I just want that opportunity to watch and absorb.
Shut up.
That's a bad word. We don't say that word.
No, but it is that thing of trying to. But it's also weird that you could be in like that kind of silent burden as well, because the thing is, you don't want someone that might screw something up if I'm not watching you kind of person as well.
Yeah.
Because now I've got to redo that, or because babysitting people is one thing, but if you kind of get the vibe off of it. I'll give you a good example of a girl called Elsa Lawson who works now, and it's not like I got her a job, but I recommended her for something. I was at one of the early IMATs when they were still at Alexandra Palace, and I was doing sculpture demos, and I'd be doing these demos all day, I had all my kit there, and I was starving, and she was trying to show me her folio, and I was just like, I had a million and one things going on. She goes, "Are you hungry? Do you want to get some lunch? Do you want to watch your kit?" And I was like, she noticed what was actually happening. She wasn't just thinking about her, and I was like, "That'd be awesome, thank you. Or do you want me to go and get you something?" I was like, "Actually, that'd be really good." There was little things like that, and that happened a few years ago.
The same. I used to run a lot of short courses, prosthetic application, and that. She would model. She'd come along and be a model because you're getting all the learning. But you're not paying for it. So you get fine. You've got to sit there and have stuff glued on you, but everything you can observe it, listen. But she modelled a lot on those courses. I remember.
Yeah, she was smart. And when it comes to packing out, it's like, "Do you want me to help you with the thing?" Because you'll always notice people like, "Oh, it's kicking out time," and they're off. Or maybe they got work or they got kids to pick up. But sometimes they're first out the door, and it's like, if the chips are down or shit, this has happened. The package coming. We've got to get ready for tomorrow. You always know somebody that's like, "Let me give you a hand, even though I'm tired. Let's get it done." We start at 3
I mean, they are the first hires. They are the people who make the space better, the place better. Who are there supporting.
They're bringing something, not taking.
And very rarely are you very often you forget. It's not about whether they can sculpt or not.
Yeah.
It's just that they're going to bring a lot of that positivity. They're going to
Somebody
not
say,
around. They're not going to say no to anything. They're just going to get stuck in, get it done, sort it out, and they're thinking about what they can do to make this job better. What can I do to make the environment better? What can I do to make things move better? And you don't have to be constantly doing that, but just, as you say, people who just come in and go, you don't have to ask them. It's like, look, there's a bin overflowing, and rather than go up and put another cup on top, and as it teeters, they're there going, "Screw this, let's get these out, let's clear out, let's sort out." And it is, it's having that right kind of attitude. And there's a lot of people who don't, we've over the years had a lot of work experience, people through the doors at Millennium, and it's that you get the two kind of people.
I'm an artist. I don't sweep up.
Sorry,
I'm an artist.
Well, this is it. It's like I didn't get a degree to empty bins. It's like
someone actually said that, didn't they?
Yeah, someone said that to me, and it's like, I empty the bins.
Yeah.
I didn't set up a company to empty the bins, but they still need fucking emptying.
Yeah.
So someone's got to do it. I will happily empty a bin. I will happily sweep up. We know there's clients turning up, and someone go quickly, make sure the loos are presentable. Fuck it. It's my business. It matters to me, and I want people who treat my business the way I treat my business, that it matters to them too. And it is. There's some people who will be out the door, they will literally go up to a bin where there's a mountain of shit on top waiting to collapse and add something else rather than just go, "Where's the bin bags? Let's just sort this out."
Yeah.
And it's that common sense thing.
And they get to the skip and they go, "The skip's full. When's the skip? He keeps into a schedule for. They're just thinking of outside of the immediate thing. It's quite amazing. But everyone does that because they're so preoccupied with what they want from it.
Yeah.
That it's like then you're kind of not adding to anything. Because when the job's really going, you need people that are contributing.
You definitely
or at least not take from you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. It's about being a bit of a team player, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Totally. It's a workshop environment is, it's a team environment. You've got to work together. You've got to work with others. You might not like someone particularly, but damn it, this mold needs making and it needs several people on it. So you've got to stand side by side and do the job.
Well, that's really true, and I think it's true when you're on set, because quite often you can get partnered with a makeup artist you've never worked with before, and you just have to adapt and work with that person to get the work done.
Yep.
So it is being socially adaptable as well.
But I mean, it's that thing. You go to these shows and you see these panels of industry experts and all the rest, and people go, "What's the important thing? How do I get a job?" And nearly every time you will get at least one of those people say, "Don't be a dick." It is such, and it is. You come in and you're going to be a pain and you're going to be a problem, and if you're going to make it it's like, don't be a dick, and people will keep hiring you. Be nice, be helpful, just don't be a dick.
There's a nice story about a journalist who met Picasso. You heard that one on TV in South France. So he's like, Picasso's 80, it's 19, whatever, 71, it's nearly old man, 19, 85. Anyway, this journalist, a young man, 18, 16, and he sees Picasso in a cafe. Of course, to be a dick, you go and say, can you do me charming? I love your painting, Mr. Picasso. It's not going to work, is it? So he went in the cafe and apparently said something like, lovely to see you, or something, a friendly comment. And he said, do you mind if I sit near you and just do a sketch of you? And he sat down and started doing a sketch of Picasso, kind of nervously, just in the cafe. So not interrupting Picasso. Picasso's doing his cup of tea, wet coffee. Because Picasso can't, he's quite like him, he's got an ego. And within 10 minutes, he says, he takes a napkin, he does a sketch of the chap. So he's got this napkin of a drawing of Picasso, and then a drawing of him by Picasso, because that broke the ice. And then somewhere in London, in probably very nice Marylebone flat, there's that drawing on a napkin of Picasso, and then Picasso of him. Yeah. But his opening gambit wasn't give me a drawing. His opening gambit was just, do you mind if I sit near you? And I don't want to interrupt you, but can I just do a sketch of you? And that broke the ice, and then that happened.
Yeah. Because that's as an opening gambit, it's saying like, oh, have you got a job? Like, if the answer is no, the conversation is stopped. There's nothing more to discuss.
And
it's kind of difficult.
Anybody creative, you get a lot of people actually want things. It gets wearing, doesn't it? People come at you all the time. You don't owe them anything.
You don't. But what I'm saying is, if the answer is no, I'm not hiring. That is it. There is whereas if it's like, can I talk to you about this? I've been trying to do this. Here's evidence of what I've been going at. I'm having a hard time getting this particular texture. Can you offer me an advice? Then I'm like, I can see there's a body of work and that you've already done stuff.
And so to respond to add to that, because this is a conversation.
Yeah, it's an engagement with, and it is just that. We're passionate about what we do. We're here because we're passionate about what we do. We love the industry we're in. We've been in it a long time. So of course, when someone comes who has a passion for what you're passionate about, shows that they're passionate about doing it, and shows that they've got put their head down and they're trying, you're going to want to help. Yeah. But it is the buggers who just pop up. I think on my Instagram, literally over the weekend, someone just going, "Hey, have you got a job?" Yes, I do. Yeah.
I hate when people send you a message and it's all like, "Hey, or something," and it's just very, it doesn't need to be formal, but it's kind of a little bit impolite, or
at least gestures.
Speaking of being a dick, I'm going to take off.
Oh, you're bailing?
I go again.
They should probably stop. It's been over 2 hours. It's been.
I think actually it's great having Neill here. It's actually really livened up the conversation.
I'm digging it. We can make this a two-part. It's
going to have to be.
I tell people, thank you so much for coming down, and
thanks for having us.
We won't make breakfast tomorrow, unfortunately.
We'll do happy hour Friday.
Yeah,
that's Coventry.
That's going to be great.
Yeah. How many of you are coming to Coventry?
Yeah.
Great. Awesome.
That's really good fun.
There's a few sad faces there.
Also, to remind me at
We're hoping to record our thing. We've done some notes as well, like 20 pages of notes.
We'll have a QR code so you can download the notes.
Wow. Okay, great.
Yeah. So we got a lot of work still to do tomorrow before we go up to Coventry. But getting back into what we were just talking about. I tell my students that I teach for selfish reasons. That anybody actually learns anything from me is kind of icing on the cake. I get off on seeing people get excited about the stuff that excites me. Because we do this because we can't not do it. We're passionate about it. If I wasn't doing this, I would be doing something else creative. I don't know what that would be, but in my 45 years of film and television work, I started working in the business in 1978, but I've only been doing makeup effects for barely 20 years, a little over 20 years. But it's the most fun I have ever had working in this business. Of all of the craftspeople, visual effects, production design, art direction, cinematography, these are the most giving people I've worked with. There are no secrets, and Dick Smith is responsible for that mindset that if you want to know how to do something, all you have to do is ask. There are dicks in every field, but this part of the business has the fewest I've ever run across. That everybody, you want to know how to do something? Come on, I'll show you. How much time you got? Yeah. Visual effects people are like, no, figure it out yourself, which makes no sense whatsoever because, I'm going to figure it out anyway, and then fuck you.
One of the best things in your book, which I bought the last edition before even sort of contemplating this course, is right at the beginning. It said about how the whole industry was interconnected. I've come from acting / 10 years of working in a call centre and just playing with clay one day and going, oh, I like making monsters, I like making things, and then reading that specific bit about, you coming on your journey. It was just like, oh, I can do this. Or at least I can. And there was another brilliant quote by Dick where he said, I took a gamble. I couldn't draw, I couldn't do this, and I couldn't do that, but I decided to just take a gamble because otherwise he might not come back from war. So yeah, it's just that enthusiasm. I love to feed off that energy.
I honestly believe that if you set your mind to it, there is nothing you can't do. And now you're living in a time where you don't know life without computers that are more powerful. Your phone is more powerful than the computers that landed us on the moon in 1969. And to all the conspiracy theorists who think the moon landing was faked, watch Star Wars that came out in 1977 and look at the video of them plotting how they're going to get the X-Wing fighters in to destroy the Death Star. It's wireframe animation.
Yeah.
You're living in a glorious time when if you can think it up, you can make it happen. And I love that. I'm envious.
There's another conversation, isn't there? The technology in films like HAL in 2001 or
Alien,
when they're talking to the mothership. It's wonderful in and of itself. I wouldn't change it for the world. None of us would.
No.
But it speaks to the time almost more than anything else, doesn't it? How technology's changed.
Yeah.
Communicators, Star Trek. Of course, we all got iPhones with FaceTime on, and that kind of happened suddenly. It wouldn't have happened.
But storytelling is still storytelling.
Yeah.
It's
They still don't
first
fly
line, she
cars.
was talking about first out the door. I really need to go to work.
We're done,
Well, Brad, you can sneak off now. Brad's going.
Yeah.
The sudden exodus.
So we'll see you
Friday
night. Friday night. Yeah, I want to catch up with you as well since we're still running through.
So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Tomorrow morning on the train.
That was a great episode. I'm glad I listened to it again before we did the bumpers.
Yeah, it's amazing how much stuff you forget.
Because it was a lot of fun, and it was a great group of students too. Falmouth knows how to bring them in.
They do, and they keep in touch as well. One got in touch with me about a mold that they were making, and I love getting questions like that. I'm sure you get the same. You get a really nice.
Yeah, no, I hear from the Falmouth students a lot. I hear from the Bolton students a lot.
It makes a big difference, doesn't it? Because it makes you realize people are still trying to do things and they're still trying to figure stuff out, which is good. It's a good sign that it's awful when you spend a lot of time trying to help people and then you hear nothing.
And it's great seeing the work that they're doing, following our advice, where you offer suggestions and you see them follow through on it and say, here, I took you up on that, and here's what I did. It's great to see that.
Yeah, it is very good. And I think it's nice, actually. I've noticed one thing as well. I'll get, sometimes I get interesting from different colleges. I'll get a rash of, like in a week, I'll get like 5 or 6 of the same question, from a different college. I can't remember.
I've been getting stuff recently from students at Bournemouth, someplace else, and I'm having an elder moment.
Well, I'm having a little dig at this one because this was, I can't remember what college it was, but I had about 4 or 5 that were asking me about innovation, and they were basically, it sounded like they're being forced to invent something for the makeup industry. And it's like,
yep, I've got from the same
and it's kind of like, and most of them are just out of desperation. They're wholly impractical things that people don't actually need, but because they've got to invent something, it's kind of like, well, you know, and it's kind of like, is that really a good use? Like, that's not really for you to. I mean, if you've got a good idea, by all means, invent something. But just to say to someone, right, you have a good idea now.
In their defense, that's probably their tutor saying,
"Oh, it is." But that's my point. It's that disconnect between what the education is asking of the students versus what you actually need to know to work in industry. And is that big?
One student told me her idea of something she's invented in, and I said, well, that already has been invented, but. And I offered a couple suggestions on how to make something better. And she came back with some further tweaks. So, you know, it's those kind of exchanges can actually be beneficial.
Fair enough. I think that, yeah, it's not to say, I mean, you know, I could run at a bunch of people with a gun and ask them to run, and some of them are going to get some cardio out of it, but that doesn't mean that's the way to do things, you know? But it just struck me that it was like, I don't know, being forced to sort of innovate something. If it's a design course where you're designing products, that kind of makes sense. But yeah, it just felt like, shouldn't you just be doing makeups instead? I don't know. Wouldn't that be more useful to do? I don't know, refront a wig or something. That would be a good thing to do. But if you haven't got that because you've been designing, I don't know, a wrist and a magnetic wrist sheath for holding brushes, which no one's ever going to use. Do you know what I mean? It's just going to be one of those things that's okay. Yeah, it just I don't know. It's like, I don't know. Is it the best use of the time? But I'm quite critical of things like that. But that's how it struck me. A lot of them were a little bit harebrained, so it didn't. Because of that, it didn't seem like it was a worthwhile exercise. But that, like you say, there's not to say there aren't a couple that could maybe come out better. But maybe you should be on a product design course then. That is a thing that exists. So,
yeah, the industrial design program.
Which is, you know, anyway, but that's me because I'm quite cynical. But apart from that, the latex thing, going back to this latex thing, I do think that latex, and again, check these notes if you haven't seen the notes already, they'll be listed on the notes for this episode. It's a 25 page booklet about this, but the idea of being able to sculpt something, make a mold of it, and then you know, do it in plaster. It's such a cheap way of doing something.
Sure, and you can feather it because if you're stippling it into the mold a little bit at a time, you can feather those edges from layer to layer so that you can get a pretty invisible edge.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what we could do. Do you remember we wrote 3 or 4 articles for Prosthetics Magazine about latex? We still have those.
Yeah, let's put
those and revisit them.
Let's.
And you mentioned, which was a really good idea, seeing as we're on the whole plaster tip, it was talking about comparing gypsums and plasters here and there, so that we could see how the difference are, you know, and like absorbency and strength and price per pound.
How long it takes to start setting up.
Yeah, that would be a really nice thing to see and done, actually, because I don't think anyone's really done that as a direct comparison. But I remember, do you remember the Doug Drexler, was it, I think the tower?
Like the sand castle tower stuff.
Yeah, that would be quite fun if we videoed that and we could have them side by side, and, you know, Ultra Cal 30 on one side and Crystal Cal R on the other, and
and potter's plaster and dental plaster, and
yes,
it could be fun.
And then like you see, do scratch tests and show how easily it scratches or not, because these things are weird qualities of a material that unless someone specifically shows you what that means, it doesn't mean
how easy it is to carve when it's wet versus completely dry.
Yeah, and the different kinds of reinforcement as well. Because when I was doing this mold, I thought I had some scrims.
That could be a little book all by itself.
Yeah, absolutely. See, these things write themselves. But when I was doing this plaster mold for this owl creature in the smiley face thing, the vampire mouth, I thought I had some burlap scrim here, but I didn't. I'd run out. So instead I used glass, and it worked great as a reinforcement. But it was interesting, again, to see how it would compare to scrim, maybe make a strip of it.
Did you use the glass mat or the cloth?
No, it was the glass mat, but it's the quad axial mat. So it has the big gaps between. so you can see the plaster go through. I don't think regular glass, the chop strand mat, would work as well, because I don't think the plaster can penetrate it. So it might be that would be, again, another comparison, maybe 3 or 4 different.
I have used it in UltraCal before, because it when it gets wet, it gets really pliable, and it works really, really nicely as a reinforcer.
Okay. I wonder if it's stronger. I guess it would be, wouldn't it?
Well, I think because it's crisscrossy. It's the north, south, east, west weave, I don't think is as strong. It's more flexible, but I don't think it gives as much strength as the stuff that is just all
strand. Yeah.
All tight, mixed up.
But see, the thing with the chop mat, there's no gaps as such. Whereas the quad axial, there is like a 1/4 inch gap between, so plaster can go through it easily. And I guess if you're doing like 5 or 6 layers, you know what I mean, that would cancel out. If it was running the same direction, it wouldn't be as strong. But if they're overlapping, you're going to get diagonals, and
we can do tests with that too.
Yeah, that would be a really good thing to do, actually. All right, that's our next task. Actually get back to down, rather than just talk about the latex and plaster, we'll actually have to fucking do some work with it and
Cool.
show this. Because I'm guessing, when people listen to this in the Philippines or, Australia, or they're going to get different materials than what we're used to, because we don't have UltraCal 30 here. We have, we have good plasters, but not as good as the stuff you guys have.
And you have something that's similar to our Forton MG, when it's basically a gypsum with an acrylic.
Yeah,
additive.
Jesmonite.
Yeah,
Jesmonite, which is the big one here, but then also acrylic 1, which is very similar. But again, that might be a nice thing to look at.
Yeah, I think we should test everything that is not, epoxy or urethane.
Okay.
All of the natural materials.
And then doing some hybrid stuff. Well, let's start with the plasters, because I think that's, again, the entry level material, and one that would be, and it would be interesting to hear from you guys.
Plaster's available everywhere. Even, we should, I think, do tests with plaster of Paris, which is going to be the weakest of all of the gypsums.
Yeah.
But it is probably the most readily available.
Sure.
And I think if you take, you can buy these acrylic fortifiers at Home Depot and Lowe's, the big box stores. They have that's an additive, an acrylic additive to the water.
Acryl 60, I remember that one.
Yeah. When you're mixing cement or concrete, you can add that stuff to plaster and UltraCal also to add strength to it. So those things, add that stuff to plaster of Paris, and boom, you're making a weak gypsum stronger right out of the gate.
Yeah.
And with proper reinforcement,
could work out well.
Maybe it is a decent mold material, certainly for some throwaway molds.
Yeah. What I noticed the other day when I was doing stuff on the house, I went to a big kind of like a Home Depot place over here called Wix, and they had a whole section on roofing, and they had a whole load of fiberglass and polyester resins, probably not quite the same stuff that we would use in the workshop, but certainly the glass mat. And like, wow, at a pinch, if your normal supplier is too difficult or whatever, these places are more, you'll find hardware stores. I
buy it at Home Depot, the fiberglass cloth and the fiberglass mat. It's more expensive, but it, if I'm in a pinch, if I need it, I know I can get it there.
Yeah, for small amounts, I think it's great, because it did occur to me as well that one of the biggest problems with a weaker material is the act of opening it, prying it open, and and often the plaster itself can't withstand the sort of compression force of the lever, of a screwdriver or a pry bar.
Yeah.
You could maybe put in certain key places where you're going to pry it, like a steel, something metal on the flange.
I actually did that recently.
Did you?
I actually did that recently. I put some aluminum strips on the flange and also in the where this is the mold and this is the flange. Just kind of bend it so it's a little bit of an L.
Yeah.
And put that at the pry points. Worked a charm.
There we go. So it's just working with, refiguring with what you have. So
yeah,
that's awesome. There we go. So yeah, we can look at all these things. I think it'll be quite nice to make videos of, because we've been a bit light on the videos.
Yes.
And we need to get back to that. So I will crack on and start doing some things this week. And then, yeah, I'll video them, and then I'll let you see what you've done. Then maybe you can do equivalents. Then we can do like a kind of maybe a split screen and see how they look. I'll be interested.
That'd be great.
Test and see how they break with weights on and things.
I'm so glad we got to catch up.
Yeah, man, it was awesome. And I will catch up with you when you get back from your job in Switzerland. Have fun.
The shizzle.
Take care, buddy. Good to see you.
Thanks, dude. Bye.
Where'd you learn to do this?
Mostly the Dick Smith Monster Makeup Handbook.